They didn't even clap. My voice trembled out into the cafe like it had so many nights before, soft notes spilling from my heart, but no one cared. Laughter clattered over my song, coffee cups slammed, chairs scraped. My words were drowned under the noise of people too busy, too distracted, too blind to hear me. When I finished the last verse, the microphone hummed in silence. Not a cheer, not a smile. Just the barista shouting, "Next order up," and the couple in the corner kissing like I didn't even exist. Heat burned in my cheeks. My fingers tightened around the mic stand as if holding onto it would keep me from collapsing. I wanted to vanish, to crawl back into the shadows where no one could mock me with their indifference. "Thank you," I whispered, though my throat was dry. No one heard. No one ever did. I stepped down from the little platform, my knees weak, my chest aching. Every note I'd sung had come from a place I never let anyone touch, but to them it was background noise. Just a girl with a cracked guitar and a dream too fragile for this cruel world. And that was the worst pain of all. Not being hated, not being booed, but being invisible. I pressed the guitar case shut with trembling hands and swallowed the tears that begged to fall. Somewhere in the crowd, someone laughed loudly, the sound cutting through me like a knife. I told myself I wouldn't cry tonight. I told myself I was stronger than that. But each night chipped away at me until I wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe my voice had no place in this world. Yet just as I turned toward the exit, clutching my case like a shield, I felt it. Eyes. A gaze so sharp and heavy it pinned me in place. My breath faltered, my skin prickled. I looked up and across the room, behind the shadows of expensive suits and cold stares. One man was watching me. Not just looking, watching, listening. And in his eyes, for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible.
Welcome to Ever After Stories, where love always finds its way even in the darkest places. If this beginning touched you, tell me, have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to read them.
Chapter 1. The Overlooked Voice. The cafe smelled of burnt espresso and cinnamon rolls, the kind that lured in college students and late-night wanderers. For me, it wasn't the smell or the cozy couches. It was the little stage tucked in the corner, barely bigger than a rug, that kept me coming back. It was the only place that would let me sing. Most nights, no one noticed. Tonight was no different. I sat at a table by the window nursing a glass of lukewarm water while the barista hummed to the blaring pop track overhead. I should have left already, but some stubborn part of me refused to walk out the door with nothing but silence. "Amara, you're up," the barista called, his voice flat, like he was announcing the weather. I dragged my guitar case to the front, heart thudding the way it always did. The strings bit at my fingertips as I tuned, but the pain was familiar, almost comforting. I began softly, the first note trembling in the air like a secret. My voice carried over the chatter, gentle but steady. I sang of loneliness, of wanting to be seen, of the ache of silence. Words I never dared say aloud poured into the microphone, wrapped in melody. For a second I thought maybe someone would listen, but laughter rose from the back, louder than my song. A man clapped his friend on the shoulder, drowning out the chorus. Two women walked past me mid-song, gossiping as if I were background noise. Invisible again. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to finish, even though humiliation burned in my throat. Each lyric felt like I was stripping myself bare, only for the world to look away. When the last chord faded, the room barely noticed. The coffee grinder roared. The register chimed. My applause was the sound of a spoon stirring sugar. "Thank you," I whispered, lowering my guitar. I slipped off the platform, wishing the floor would swallow me whole. Maybe I should quit. Maybe tonight should be the last night I ever let myself hope. But then I felt it again, that gaze. I didn't know how long he'd been sitting there, but now I couldn't look away. He sat near the back, dressed in a tailored suit that didn't belong in a place like this. His hair was dark, swept back with precision, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. But it was his eyes that held me still. Gray, stormy, unblinking. He was watching me. Not with pity, not with disinterest, with intensity, as if my voice had reached inside him and touched something even he didn't understand. I looked away quickly, cheeks burning. Probably just my imagination. Men like him didn't look at girls like me. Nice try tonight, Amara. The barista gave me a half smile as I passed. Maybe pick something more upbeat next time. People like happy songs. I bit down the words rising in my throat. My songs weren't meant to be happy, they were meant to be true. I reached the door, tugging it open to the night air, when a voice called behind me. Deep, commanding. Wait. I froze. My fingers tightened around my guitar case. Slowly I turned. It was him, the man in the suit. He was standing now, towering, his presence filling the cafe. Every pair of eyes turned toward him, yet he was looking only at me. You wrote that song? His voice was low, smooth, but it carried. My lips parted. Yes. Something flickered in his eyes. Interest. Curiosity. Maybe something more. I want to hear it again. My heart stuttered. I blinked, sure I'd misheard. Excuse me? He stepped closer, not breaking eye contact. Sing it again. Tomorrow, same time. I'll be here. Whispers rippled through the cafe. Who was this man who spoke with such certainty, as though the world bent to his will? I swallowed hard. Why? His gaze darkened. Because it wasn't just a song. It was real. He paused, almost reluctant, and I don't hear real very often. Then, without waiting for my answer, he slipped a business card onto the counter, nodded once, and walked out into the night. I stared after him, my pulse racing, the weight of his words anchoring deep in my chest. I should have thrown that card away. I should have told myself it was nothing. But I couldn't, because for the first time, someone had heard me. And he wasn't just someone. He was the man everyone in this city whispered about. Dominic Hale, CEO of Hale Records, the king of music himself. Chapter 2. The CEO's Obsession. The next night, the cafe buzzed as usual, full of chatter and clinking mugs, but a different kind of tension hung in the air. Customers glanced toward the corner table more than once, whispering among themselves. Dominic Hale was back, and no one could understand why a man of his stature would be in a neighborhood cafe 2 nights in a row. He sat alone, composed, with a presence that seemed too powerful for the humble surroundings. His expensive watch glinted under the dim lights, but his eyes never left the small platform. It was as if the cafe existed only for one purpose, to hear her voice again. Amara walked in quietly, clutching her guitar case like a lifeline. Whispers followed her too, patrons already connecting her to the mysterious billionaire. Some scoffed, others smirked. A few were openly jealous. When she stepped onto the stage, the room hushed in an unfamiliar way. Curiosity replaced indifference. People wanted to know what could possibly hold the attention of a man like Dominic Hale. She began to sing, her voice delicate yet unshakably raw. Every note carved into the silence, pulling even the most distracted listener to attention. This time, the crowd didn't laugh or chatter. They listened, some leaning forward, some blinking back unexpected emotion. But Dominic, he was utterly still. His jaw was tight, his gaze fixed, his entire being consumed by her song. For a man who sat through boardroom negotiations worth billions without flinching, it was unnerving to feel his chest ache at the sound of a single woman's voice. When the last chord lingered, silence wrapped around the room like a spell. Then, slowly, applause broke out. Tentative at first, then stronger, until the cafe rang with clapping hands and shouts. Amara's wide eyes swept the crowd in disbelief. For the first time they had heard her. and all because of the man in the corner. Dominic rose to his feet, breaking the spell with his commanding presence. He didn't clap. Instead, he walked to the counter, slid a thick envelope across to the owner, and spoke in his low, measured tone. "She sings here every night. From now on, her stage is never closed. Consider it taken care of." Gasps rippled. Amara froze, her fingers trembling on the guitar strings. The barista nodded quickly, practically bowing, but Dominic didn't spare him a glance. His eyes were locked on her. After the crowd dispersed, he approached her. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, tall, broad-shouldered, with a confidence that seemed carved into his bones. "You belong on more than a cafe stage," he said simply. "I want to record you." Her heart thudded. The offer was too sudden, too impossible. She shook her head, words tumbling out nervously. I don't think I'm ready for that. I'm just no one." A flicker of intensity darkened his gaze. "Don't ever call yourself that again." His voice was firm, unyielding, as though daring her to argue. "You are not no one. You are the only voice I've heard in years that isn't artificial." The conviction in his tone made her chest tighten. No one had ever spoken about her like that. Still, fear crept in. The world she knew was small, safe in its invisibility. His world was vast, merciless, filled with eyes that would tear her apart. "I can't just step into your world," she whispered. "You won't be stepping alone," he replied, softer now. His hand brushed hers, not quite a touch, but close enough to send a shiver through her. "Let me show you." In that moment, she understood something terrifying. Dominic Hale wasn't asking. He was deciding. And when a man like him decided, the world shifted to make it so. The following days blurred into something she couldn't have imagined. Limousines replaced buses. Five-star restaurants replaced corner diners. Studio sessions replaced lonely nights with her guitar. But along with the glitter came shadows. High society women eyed her with disdain, whispering behind jeweled fingers, "She's just a cafe girl. What does he even see in her? She'll embarrass him." Amara tried to block it out, but their words clung like burrs. And Dominic noticed. At a charity gala, the whispers grew louder. A sleek woman with crimson lips and diamonds glittering at her throat leaned close enough for Amara to hear. "You'll never fit here. He'll tire of you." Amara's cheeks burned, her throat tightening. She turned to retreat, but before she could, Dominic appeared at her side, his hand sliding around her waist, pulling her close in full view of the crowd. His voice was steady, lethal. "Careful with your words. The woman you mock will be the one they write history about, not you." The room fell into stunned silence. The woman's smile faltered, her face paling. Dominic didn't look at her again. His entire focus was on Amara, as if daring the world to challenge him. Her breath caught, her body trembling, not from fear, but from the way his hand lingered, firm and protective at her side. For the first time, she saw what it meant to be wanted, not as a passing fancy, not as a background voice, but as someone worth defending. And that was when the danger began. Chapter 3. Worlds collide. Dominic's world unfolded before Amara like a gilded cage. One day she was waiting tables. The next she was swept into studios with soundproof walls, grand pianos, and producers who stared at her like she was a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. Dominic was always there, watching from behind the glass, arms folded, gaze steady. "You don't have to be like anyone else," he told her after her first session, when nerves made her voice shake. "I don't want another polished star, I want you." Those words anchored her, gave her courage to sing again, to let her soul pour into the microphone. And yet, even as she began to believe she had a place in his world, the shadows whispered. Paparazzi followed her now, flashes of cameras bursting like lightning as she walked beside him. Gossip magazines printed her face with cruel headlines, "The Nobody and the King." Is Hale Records slipping? His cafe girl mistake. At first, she laughed it off, telling herself it didn't matter, but the sneers in boardrooms, the mocking glances at galas, the hushed insults that cut sharper than knives, they wore her down. At one event, a sleek ballroom glittered with chandeliers, the floor alive with silken gowns and champagne laughter. Amara stood at Dominic's side, her simple navy dress pale beside jeweled gowns worth more than her yearly salary had once been. She tried to smile, tried to keep her shoulders straight. But then a group of society wives, perfectly coiffed, drifted closer. Their voices were syrupy, their smiles too sharp. "She's sweet," one said, sipping her champagne. "But really, Dominic, don't you think she's more cafe than Carnegie?" Another laughed. "Imagine her at the Met Gala. Adorable." Heat flamed in Amara's cheeks. She tried to step back, to disappear, but Dominic's hand caught hers, holding her still. "Careful," he said, his voice steel under velvet. The room hushed around them as his gaze cut through the women. Every empire starts somewhere small. Hers begins with her voice. A voice that will outlast every jeweled dress in this room. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The women faltered, one biting her lip, the other pretending sudden interest in her glass. Dominic turned, ignoring them completely, and faced Amara. His thumb brushed her hand softly, grounding her. "They don't matter," he murmured, low enough for only her to hear. "Only you do." The words made her heart stutter, but doubts lingered like smoke. Could she really belong here? Or was she only dragging him down? In the days that followed, she began to notice a change in Dominic. His focus on her grew sharper, his protectiveness fiercer. He rearranged his schedule to appear at her rehearsals, canceled meetings to walk her through the city. The business tycoon who once lived for empire now seemed to live for stolen moments at her side. One evening, he took her up to the roof of his skyscraper, the city glittering below like a sea of stars. The wind tangled her hair, and for once there were no flashing cameras, no whispers, no jeers. Just them. "Do you know what I heard when you sang that first night?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, afraid to breathe too loudly and break the fragile spell. "I heard truth," he said. "Everyone else feeds me what they think I want. Your voice, it gave me what I needed." Her throat tightened, emotions swelling. And what was that? Something real. His eyes burned with intensity. Something worth fighting for. The air between them shifted. The weight of his confession pressed into her chest, making her pulse race. He reached for her hand, slowly, deliberately, giving her every chance to pull away. But she didn't. When his fingers laced through hers, it felt inevitable, like the world had always been waiting for this moment. Her heart screamed yes, but her mind whispered caution. Society already called her unworthy. What would they do if they knew how deeply he cared? The answer came sooner than expected. A gossip blog released a venomous article the very next morning. Grainy photos of her entering Dominic's penthouse splashed across headlines. Gold digger cafe girl moves in. Is Hale losing his edge over a woman? Amara's phone buzzed nonstop. Old classmates, distant relatives, strangers. Everyone suddenly had an opinion. The cafe where she once sang turned into a circus of reporters. She felt hunted, exposed. "Dominic, this is too much," she whispered when he arrived that evening, his jaw tight from meetings. "They won't stop. They'll tear me apart. And you, your reputation..." He silenced her with a look so fierce it made her heart quake. "Let them come. Let them write their lies. I built my empire on storms stronger than this. I won't lose sleep over their noise." But she wasn't so certain. Her entire world had flipped upside down, and she wasn't sure she was strong enough to stand against it. Still, when he pulled her into his arms that night, holding her as though he could shield her from the entire world, a dangerous truth echoed inside her chest. She wasn't just singing for herself anymore. She was singing for him, for them, and if the world wanted to break her, they would have to go through Dominic Hale first. Chapter 4. The Breaking Point. Success came faster than Amara ever imagined. Her first single, recorded in Dominic's state-of-the-art studio, swept across streaming platforms. Within weeks, her voice played in cars, in cafes, in the same streets that once ignored her. People who never noticed her name now hummed her lyrics as though they had always belonged to them. But with recognition came venom. Jealous competitors whispered that Dominic had handed her fame on a silver platter. Industry veterans sneered, claiming she hadn't paid her dues. Online trolls filled her feeds with accusations. She's just his girlfriend. He bought her career. Without him, she's nothing. At first, Dominic brushed it all off, telling her not to waste a breath on liars. "Your voice speaks louder than they ever will," he said. And for a while, she believed him. But the attacks grew more vicious. One morning, a tabloid cover screamed across newsstands, "Gold digger or genius? Amara Lewis exposed." The article inside twisted half-truths into poison, claiming she had plotted to trap Dominic for money and fame. Worse, it included a fake source from inside Hale Records suggesting Dominic had fallen under her spell and was risking millions for her sake. The headlines didn't just humiliate her, they made her a liability. At a board meeting, Dominic stormed in late, his usual composure fraying. A senior executive slid a printed article across the table. "This is bad for business," the man said coldly. "Investors are questioning your judgment. They think you're compromised." Dominic's voice was sharp. "My judgment built this empire. Do not question it now." But the damage was done. The whispers reached Amara's ears, carried by people eager to wound. The cruelest part was that she could see it. The way he canceled meetings to be at her rehearsals. The way his focus shifted more to her than the billion-dollar company he ran. Late one night, as they sat in his penthouse with the city glittering below, Amara turned to him, her chest tight. "Dominic, maybe they're right." He froze, his glass halfway to his lips. "About what?" "About me. About us. I'm hurting you. Your company, your reputation. It's all unraveling because of me." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." His jaw clenched. He set the glass down with deliberate calm, but his eyes burned with fire. "Don't you ever say that again. You are not my weakness, Amara. You are the only thing in my life that makes sense." Her throat ached with unshed tears. "But what if loving me costs you everything?" His voice lowered, dark and unyielding. "Then let it cost me." The words should have comforted her, but instead they terrified her. He was risking too much for her, and she couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, he'd be better off without her. The breaking point came days later. She was leaving the studio when a rival producer cornered her, his smirk cruel. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he sneered. "Dominic's infatuation won't protect you forever. You'll be yesterday's news the moment he wakes up from this little spell." Her hands shook, but his next words shattered her. "Everyone knows he's just using you for inspiration. When your novelty fades, so will you." That night, Amara sat alone, staring at her reflection in Dominic's vast, gilded mirror. The woman staring back looked foreign, draped in luxury yet hollow. Was she really just a project? A passing fancy? Was she fooling herself into believing she could belong in his world? Her decision tore through her like glass. When Dominic returned from another war with the board, exhausted and frayed, she was waiting. A suitcase sat by the door. "What is this?" His voice was sharp, but beneath it was fear. Her chest heaved. "I can't do this anymore. Dominic, I'm destroying you. I can't be the reason they tear you down." His steps were slow, deliberate, as he closed the distance. "You think leaving will save me? You think walking away will fix anything?" Tears blurred her vision. "I think it's the only way to protect you." His hand reached for hers, but she pulled back, the rejection cutting him deeper than any boardroom betrayal. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't make this harder." For the first time, Dominic Hale looked powerless. The man who commanded empires, who bent industries to his will, stood helpless as the only woman who mattered slipped through his fingers. Her last words broke them both. "You deserve someone the world won't laugh at." Then she walked out, the door closing softly behind her, leaving his empire intact, yet leaving him empty. In the silence of his penthouse, Dominic stood motionless, the city's glow flickering against his hollow eyes. For the first time in his life, the billionaire who had everything realized he had nothing at all. Chapter 5. The Queen of His Heart. Days turned into weeks, and though Amara's song remained on the charts, her world felt quieter than ever. She moved back into her tiny apartment, the walls pressing in on her, her once vivid dreams now painted in shades of doubt. She sang only to herself at night, the echo of her own voice both a comfort and a torment. Meanwhile, Dominic Hale was not the type of man to surrender. At first, he tried the predictable path. Calls, flowers, notes slipped beneath her door. She ignored them all. Each unanswered gesture left him raw, but he refused to give up. Soon the entire city knew Dominic Hale was chasing someone who dared to walk away. His board warned him he was humiliating himself. The tabloids mocked him. But he didn't care. He began fighting back in the one way he knew best, powerfully, publicly, without shame. At a press conference meant to unveil a new Hale Records partnership, Dominic stood before cameras and blindsided everyone with a declaration. "This company has built its empire on talent, and the greatest talent I've ever seen isn't standing here in this boardroom. She's out there, singing songs that the world tried to silence." His voice carried like thunder. "Her name is Amara Lewis, and I don't care what anyone thinks. I'll spend the rest of my life proving she is not unworthy, but irreplaceable." The room erupted, journalists clamoring, investors fuming, but the world listened. Clips of his words flooded social media. For the first time, the narrative shifted. People weren't mocking her. They were asking, who is Amara Lewis, the woman worth risking everything for? Amara watched it all from her couch, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her heart screamed to run back to him, but fear held her prisoner. What if the world tore him apart for her again? What if her love destroyed him in ways his empire couldn't recover from? It was at her lowest point that fate forced her hand. One evening, as she walked past a small community center, she overheard voices inside. Curiosity tugged her forward. Through the open doors, she saw a group of children gathered, listening to a volunteer strum a guitar. "Sing for us, Miss Amara." One little girl suddenly squealed when she spotted her. The room erupted with tiny claps and chants. She froze. I can't." But their eager faces, their belief, broke down the walls around her heart. Slowly, almost trembling, she began to sing. Her voice filled the small hall, pure and unguarded. The children swayed, the parents clapped, and for the first time since leaving Dominic, Amara remembered why she sang. Not for fame, not for approval, but because her voice had power. It could heal, it could inspire, it could matter. That night, she realized she couldn't keep running. The next morning, as if the universe itself had decided she'd waited long enough, her phone buzzed with an invitation. Dominic was hosting a gala at Hale Records Grand Hall, a night meant to unveil his company's next chapter. Her chest tightened. Was this fate, or her chance to finally stand beside him without shame? The night of the gala, the city glittered under a canopy of stars. Reporters thronged outside, flashing cameras as limousines spilled out celebrities and executives. Inside, the hall gleamed with crystal chandeliers and golden arches. And at the center of it all stood Dominic Hale, immaculate in his suit, yet carrying a shadow in his eyes that no wealth could mask. When he spotted her entering, silence fell between them despite the roar of the crowd. He crossed the room, every step controlled, though his heart thundered. "You came," he breathed, almost disbelieving. Amara's voice trembled, but it was steady enough. "I had to. Dominic, Her throat caught as every fear, every doubt, collided with the love she could no longer deny. "I thought I was saving you by leaving, but the truth is, I was just afraid. Afraid I'd never be enough for your world." His gaze burned into hers. "Then listen carefully, because I'll say it once and I'll say it loud enough for every single person in this room to hear." He turned, his voice booming so all eyes were on them. "Amara Lewis is the only queen my world will ever know, and if this empire can't honor her, then it isn't worth keeping." The crowd gasped, whispers spreading like wildfire. But Dominic's focus never wavered from her. Tears streaked Amara's face, her voice breaking free like a song. "I don't care what they call me. I don't care what I lose. I want to be yours." In front of the glittering city's elite, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, a claim not even the harshest critic could deny. The room burst into chaos, some shocked, some applauding, some outraged. But for them, the world had finally fallen silent. At last, she had stepped into her crown, not as the girl overlooked, but as the queen chosen by the man who would risk everything to love her. Chapter 6. Happily Ever After. The kiss at the gala did more than set tongues wagging. It set the city on fire. Headlines blared across every screen. Billionaire CEO declares love for unknown singer. Some mocked, others cheered, but none could deny the truth. Dominic Hale had chosen his queen. The fallout was swift. Board members threatened resignations. Investors withdrew. Old allies turned their backs. But Dominic had braced for it. "Let them leave," he told his team with an iron calm. "This company will rebuild, but it will rebuild on truth." For Amara, it was terrifying and freeing. She had braced for hatred, for more cruel whispers. Instead, she found something unexpected. People who saw her, not as a perfect star, but as a woman who dared to stand in love's light despite the world's scorn. Messages poured in from other dreamers, from young singers, from women who had been told they were unworthy. "You gave us hope," one wrote. Those words meant more to her than any chart ranking ever could. And so, Amara sang again. But this time not in crowded cafes or faceless studios. She stood center stage at Hale Records' rebuilt launch event, rebranded now as Hale Harmony, an empire not of power, but of voices that deserved to be heard. Dominic introduced her himself, standing tall before the crowd. "Every empire I've built pales beside the sound of her voice. Tonight, I don't introduce a product, I introduce purpose, and her name is Amara Lewis." She walked onto the stage, her gown shimmering under the lights, her heart pounding. This was no longer about approval. This was about truth. She sang her song, a song not of sorrow, but of triumph. Her voice soared, filling the hall, echoing into every heart that listened. And when she finished, there was silence. Then, wave after wave of applause, not forced, not polite, real. Dominic joined her on stage, his hand finding hers. Together they bowed. Months passed, and though challenges remained, love had rooted itself deeper than either had imagined. They escaped sometimes from the city, retreating to quiet cabins where he cooked breakfast badly, and she laughed until her sides hurt. Other times, they walked hand in hand through crowds that once sneered but now only whispered in awe. One evening, in the hush of their home, Dominic knelt on one knee, holding out a ring not as a symbol of wealth, but as a vow. "Amara, you taught me that love is the only empire worth fighting for. Be my wife. Be my queen, not because of the world's crown, but because of mine." Tears shimmered in her eyes as she whispered the word she had once been too afraid to say. Yes. Their wedding was not the spectacle tabloids expected. No glittering stadiums, no over-the-top displays. Just a garden filled with wildflowers, close friends, children singing, and a love so bright it outshone the sun. And as she stood beside Dominic Hale, no longer invisible, no longer overlooked, Amara realized she had found her place. Not because of the world's approval, not because of his empire, but because she had found the courage to stand in her truth and the man who had chosen to kneel beside her. Together, they proved that no cruel word, no bitter doubt, no rejection could erase what was written in their hearts. Amara had become more than a voice. She had become his queen, and he had become the man who would love her until the end of time.
Thank you for listening to this story on Ever After Stories. What did you think of Amara and Dominic's journey? Do you believe love can truly defy the weight of society's judgment? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. Until next time, thank you for being here.